kind of doing a little bit of a mixture of a webinar where you wouldn't normally see anybody other than me, and just trying to make it feel a little bit more like a workshop. Hence why everybody's come onto the screen as well. So for those that don't know me, I'm Natalie Sims. I'll introduce myself in a moment, but really pleased that you're joining us for this Action Coach workshop this afternoon on mental strength for success in business. And Gilly, you must have loved this so much because it's your second time.
Oh, is it?
Anyway, I took that as a big compliment from...
Yeah, I take it as a compliment, Natalie. Okay. That's a good idea. Oh, so have I seen this before? I didn't realise that.
Don't worry, okay. you repeat, and you learn even more. That's good.
I might, yeah.
There we go. But for everybody else, that's not new to any of my workshops or webinars, and I'm going to talk about some of our group coaching in a moment. And if you're not familiar with Action Coach, let me just position firstly Action Coach, and then a little bit about me, and then we'll get into today's workshop session. So firstly, if you don't know Action Coach, we are the world's #1 business coaching firm. We have more than 1,000 coaching offices around the world in 80 different countries. On average, every week, there's about 15,000 businesses around the world, including here in the UK, which is one of our biggest markets, being coached by people like me. We're a privately owned business. Brad Sugars is our founder. He founded the business in 1993, so we're very well established and up and running, and very effective as the world's #1 business coaching firm. A little bit about me. So I'm the owner of the franchise for Action Coaching. We call it Winchester, Basingstoke and Farnborough, but it's quite a large geography here in Hampshire, parts of Sussex, West Berkshire and Surrey. And so I'm a business owner myself, owning this franchise business. I'm the managing director, and I'm also the head coach. And Jason, who is on today's session, he's another coach within the team as well. I've also co-founded and started up my own technology business. I did that just after the last economic crisis back in 2009. So I've got a lot of experience of all the challenges that business owners, entrepreneurs face, and it's really part of my why I'm actually doing this Action Coach business, because certainly going back to my startup business, I would have loved to have had an Action Coach. I had lots of different people advising me, but it would have been great just to have one business coach that could help me on the full range of challenges and topics that every business owner faces. I've also got a strong background in a number of large companies, Disney and Condé Nast probably being two of the most famous. And I discovered really my passion for coaching around about 4 years ago. I went back to Henley Business School, did a professional coaching certificate, and then loved coaching people, and then discovered Action Coach and kind of put business and coaching together. And that's what I now do for all of my waking hours. I coach people in both group settings and one-to-one. Just a couple of ground rules for today. I think it's always important to kind of get out the way and position up front. And the first is this. It's called the point of power. And I'm going to come back to this a little bit later as well. We've just got Gaston joining as well.
Yep, just letting him in.
So this is the point of power, and I'm going to talk a little bit about this when we come into the heart of the topic of mental strength as well. But for me to be able to coach people, I need people to be in a really positive frame of mind and be demonstrating I call these positive behaviors, being responsible, being accountable, taking ownership. And the good news for all of you coming into this hour session is, despite all the challenges that are all around us in the world, and you can forget those for the next hour, because this is all going to be about positive thinking about how we take ourselves forward and how we take our businesses forward as well. So I just ask that in this next 50 minutes or so, you bring your best to this, you bring your positive self to this, but I'm going to come back to the theme of being above the point of power and not being below the point of power and being in those kind of negative behaviors of blame and excuses and denial. I'll come back to that thought. And what we love in Action Coach is for people coming into coaching, coming into webinars and workshops to participate fully. We go on the principle that give 100% and you get 100% back. So mostly it's because we've got very limited time and I've got a lot of information I want to impart to you today. You're going to be hearing from me for the vast majority of the time. At the end, though, we're trying to keep some time back so that we can go through a really good workshop exercise and actually leverage that a little bit at the end as well. So I'm going to ask that you kind of hold back questions and let me kind of present today's topic, and then we're going to do some work together using a combination of the chat, and maybe there'll be some time for some discussion as well. And the last thing, ground rule, with hopefully I'm not sounding too prescriptive and instructional, is the two most dangerous words in our vocabulary for being able to learn are these two: I know. Because as soon as you say I know to yourself, it triggers your brain to say, right, don't listen to what Natalie's about to say. I know, better than this already. Well, you've come into this session, so open your minds, take on the new knowledge. So replace I know with isn't that interesting? And that gives you a different trigger to your brain to say, okay, I may know this, but let me take on board this new knowledge, new information, and I'll judge it afterwards rather than closing it off right up front. No more ground rules other than, hopefully, today you're going to have lots of BFO moments, so blinding flashes of the obvious. And what I always ask people to do in my coaching sessions is keep a note of them. At some point we can share them in the chat box as well. So, these are those light bulb moments you perhaps do, the light does go on in your brain that you've actually really learned something meaningful that you're going to take away from the session. So hopefully you're going to have lots of these BFO moments today as well. At the end of the session, I'm just going to kind of cover our offer from today, but just to mention it up front, if you would like to book in with me for a complimentary session to talk about your business and how to grow your business and how I can help you through my coaching, then that's one of today's offers, as is a complimentary visit into either our Profit Club or Action Club for our two group coaching sessions that we hold every 2 weeks. And both of these are running again next week. And Jilly, in today's sessions, she's one of our lovely Profit Club members. Today's topic on mental strength for success in business is what we first of all did in Profit Club a couple of weeks ago. Just to give you a sense of what the kind of material that we cover in Profit Club today will give you a flavour of that, and the same with Action Club. I'll come back to that later. But let's get into today's topic of mental strength for success in business and setting up the best start for 2021. I think we all appreciate there's probably, mental strength, mental health never been more talked about than it has since we've been going through and still going through lockdown. And it's super important for our positivity as business owners and entrepreneurs. And there's this quote that's on this slide from Jim Rohn. I think it's really important for this session, which is, successful people do what unsuccessful people don't do, and that's that they don't wish it was easier, they wish that they were better. So that's really sums up how I'm going to approach this session on mental strength for success in business. It's about making us all mentally stronger so that we can be better versions of ourselves. Now, Vicky is going to download into the chat box for you all. So when she does, you need to download this and save it. And it's a form that looks like this. And what I'm going to ask that you do is, as we go through the next 40 or so minutes, and I'm kind of presenting this topic to you, I'm going to cover all the themes which are noted on that one-page form. We're going to be talking about taking opportunities, about being proactive, about resilience, persistence, patience, all these topics. What I'd like each of you to do, just for yourselves, is to score yourselves and be really honest with yourself. So once I've presented the topic of taking opportunity, I'd like to give you yourselves a score out of 10. Now, if it's one of the boxes some themes on the left-hand side of the page, a driving force, then it's what we call a positive force that's working for you. So a 10 on a driving force means that, you know, you're absolutely world class. In this case, you know, the first one is seeing, creating, taking opportunities. If you score yourself 10 there, it means you're absolutely world class at seeing and taking and creating opportunities for you and your business. If it's a negative force, so it's something that's on the right hand side of the form, then a 10 is the opposite. It means it's something that's kind of holding you back, because a 10 would mean it's a real force that's resisting you right now, that's preventing you from being the kind of best you possibly can be. So please do, as I go through this next 40 minutes or so, you'll see these topics are listed in the sequence that I'm going to be talking about. Do give yourself that very, very honest self-rating. You know, this is for your benefit. And what you'll have at the end of this, and I'll summarize this again for you, you're going to have effectively a mirror on the mental strength topics, on your own mental strength, as I talk about topics in this session. What we're going to do at the very end, when I stop presenting, is then I'm going to ask you to start by putting in the chat box these that you're kind of scoring yourself on the lowest when it comes to those positive forces, and perhaps ones that you're scoring yourself on the highest when it's a negative. And then what I'd love for you to come out of today's sessions with is some action points that you can take away to help you improve on these areas that you're kind of weak on, or kind of your weak areas. But a little bit more about that towards the end. All you need to do now is relax, enjoy this session, be open to all the knowledge, but do kind of score yourself as we go through each of these topics. And the first one really is this concept of taking opportunity. So, you know, all of our businesses right now, we're on a certain trajectory, and this we're showing here a business that, the good news is, it's growing. It's not, you know, it's not flat in its growth, and it's certainly not declining. But if we think about all the opportunities that come our way each individual week, each individual day, and there's loads of them. And if you think about the businesses that are succeeding the most at the moment, and entrepreneurs that are achieving the most, even during the COVID crisis, it's the ones that have this ability to see, create, and importantly, take opportunities. So what we want to be thinking about in this session is, what are all the opportunities that come your way that you perhaps are not conscious of, that right now you're not seeing because perhaps you're not in the best frame of mind? What I want you to start to do is to be creative in first of all, being conscious that these opportunities are going to come to you. So you need to see them in the first place. And if sometimes it feels that opportunities are not there, then I want to show you some ways to create opportunities as well. In a moment, I'm just going to introduce you to one of the key things that we work through in Action Coach, certainly for generating, you know, new sales and marketing activity. But what we're trying to demonstrate here is that if you take, say, the next 3 months, and on average you either see or you create, or importantly, you take just one opportunity each week for the next 3 months. Imagine what that cumulative opportunity can be for you and for your business going forward. Now, until you do take an opportunity, then your trajectory is still the same as it always was. But as soon as you take one of these opportunities that do come your way, then you are at the beginning of improving that trajectory line. And if you think about that, perhaps over the next couple of weeks, as you know, you perhaps become a bit more conscious of this concept of, am I seeing opportunities? Am I creating opportunities? And if you kind of target yourself to, you know, the best opportunity from each week, then take it. And then over time, what will happen, this maybe is a slight exaggeration in 3 months to kind of take this level of trajectory growth curve, but we're just trying to overemphasize the importance of doing this, because if you look at the counter of this, you don't take these opportunities, then what is that opportunity that you're leaving on the table as well? But the important thing is about taking opportunity. And if you listen, again, coming back to positivity and having strong mental strength and being positive, if you listen to the most successful people in the world, whatever walks of life, but certainly, you know, the most successful entrepreneurs, they will use language like, I took that opportunity, you know, I created that situation, I created that market, I took that opportunity. So we want you seeing opportunities, creating opportunities and taking opportunities. Now in Action Coach, one of the ways that we can do that for our clients is, first of all, to get you to think about these, what we call our 5 ways for growing your business. Now, I'm not going to labor on these too much, it's just give you some kind of hopeful new inspiration about the kind of way to go about creating opportunities for you and your business as well. And I'm going to come back to this a little bit more towards the end. But in Action Coach, what we work on is the principle that, you know, most business owners know how many customers they have, what their revenue is and what their profit is. But we kind of say in our world, those are just the outcomes of 5 much more important things. And the 5 most important things that we all have the levers for as business owners and entrepreneurs for our businesses is how many leads we generate, how effective we are at converting those leads into real customers, how good are we at repeat business and, you know, selling multiple times each year to each of our customers, and how good are we at creating opportunity to add more and more value to our customers so that we can improve the value of each transaction that we do make with our customers, and what opportunity do we create for ourselves in order to improve our gross profit margins as well. And in Action Coach, what we do is we work on week in, week out steps to and opportunities to improve each of these 5 ways. And, you know, what we're looking for is constantly to make small improvements, implement new strategies. And the other good news within working with a coach in Action Coach is we have 388 different strategies available for our clients to work on the combination of how can you go about improving your leads, your conversion rate, your number of transactions and your transaction value and your gross profit. But if you need some inspiration about how to go about creating opportunities, then a big part of it is how can you create, you know, implement new marketing strategies to generate new leads, improve your conversion rate, ultimately increase your number of customers, improve that lifetime value that you get from your customers. I'll talk a little bit more about this at the end as well. So on that score sheet, the first thing we're asking you to give yourself a self-reflection and score on is that thing about how good are you today at creating, seeing, creating and taking opportunities. So give yourself a score on that. I know we've had a couple of people join since we've started. I just want to check that everyone's downloaded the form, and that was on the chat box, and that you downloaded it and saved it. Anybody doesn't have it, please shout, otherwise I'm going to keep going.
When I download it, I'm getting code error, but I think it's just my link. I think there's just something wrong with my Zoom link.
Okay, Ginny. Okay.
So if you can send it me afterwards rather than disturbing you, Natalie, that will be fine. And then
All right,
I'll
Ginny. And maybe if it's possible to email it to Ginny.
Yeah, not a problem. I think I've got your email address, so I can actually send it over to you now if you like.
All right, cool, thanks. I'm sure it's just Zoom. Sorry for causing the disturbance.
No worries, Ginny. So yeah, time's really marched on. So let's crack on with this. So the starting point of thinking about our mental strength is this point as well. It's like, if you're not changing, then you're not growing. And so if you are not growing as the business owner, you're not investing in your self-development, then your business is not going to be growing as well. And so we very much link the 2 things together when we're coaching. You know, I want to work with my clients to help them grow so that they can grow their businesses. And with everything in life, you know, we've got that choice, deliberate choice to make. Do we want to change, or do we want to stay as we are? You know, do we want to sit and wait, or do we want to be proactive? And I've talked about, you know, seeing, creating, taking opportunity. Clearly that requires us to be proactive in our outlook. So what I want to encourage you all to be is on the being proactive side and not sitting and waiting. And, you know, I've got some clients who are absolutely thriving through COVID, who are just luckier than the right industry. And then I've got a number of clients who are surviving when others are not. And it's purely because they are being proactive and looking for new ways to generate income for their businesses as well. So I know there's another score to give yourself on what do you feel your current level of proactivity is. I'm not really going to labor much more on that point of proactivity. There's more important things to talk about. But what we are looking to do is to kind of engender that sense of change, because the danger is, as human beings, we're all programmed to want to be comfortable, to seek comfort. And we're all very familiar with the concept of, you know, our comfort zone. And, you know, as I say, we're kind of hardwired and programmed as human beings to want to stay as we are and to do today what we did yesterday, you know, to do next week what we're doing this week, and to do next month what we're doing this month. Well, you know, we need to break out of that, and we need to expand our comfort zone if we are going to be able to change. So how do we do that? Well, the good news is, and I don't know how many of you are familiar with this concept, but if you consider this diagram where, you know, your comfort zone is that zone that's in the center of this diagram here. Well, the good news is this thing outside of your comfort zone called the performance zone. And it's a real nice cushion to be in before this other zone, which a lot of us perhaps imagine there. And I'm going to talk a little bit in a moment about how fear, we all have fears at different levels of fear, but, you know, fear is not real. Fear is made up in our minds, and it's an emotional thing that isn't real. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a moment. But for some people, those people that are particularly limited by their comfort zone, there's a good chance it's because they see only two zones. You know, they see comfort zone and then it's fear zone. Well, the good news is, for all of us, there is this thing outside of our comfort zone. And before we even need to think about fear, which is this performance zone. So we can probably all recognize those times when we have been growing at our best. You know, we've been learning the most, and we've been stepping out of our comfort zone. You know, this might be professionally, it might be in our businesses, it might be in sport. You know, all those moments where you've decided to take on something new, a new challenge, learn new skills. That's when we're actually stepping out of our comfort zone, and we're kind of dipping into the performance zone, where when we do this enough, we start to then expand our comfort zone. And, you know, the performance zone is a great place to be. And if you can get used to being comfortable, being outside of your comfort zone, and recognizing there is this exciting zone called performance that you can be in, and it's when you're going to grow, and it's when you're going to be at your best, and it's when you're growing because you're in the performance zone and you're stretching yourself, you're learning new skills to develop your business, then your business is going to be growing and getting better results as well. Now, there is an optimum place to be on this, and that's on the edge of performance and fear. And you can probably, again, recognize those moments in your life when you've made that big breakthrough, and you probably have been on the sense of, you know, you're on the edge of something that you're really fearing, you know, fearing some failure perhaps. But it is that moment where you've really pushed yourself. You've perhaps had to take on something repeatedly that's taken you out of your comfort zone for, you know, a number of days, a number of weeks, a number of months. But as a result of it, you've learned a lot of new stuff, and you've been in the performance zone, even if you didn't know about it. But the day that you make that big breakthrough is that day that you're on the edge of the performance and the fear zone. And it's a good place to be, but it's also, you know, quite a dangerous place to be if you're going to try and live your life on it. You know, that's got probably ultimately damage your mental strength and mental health. Now, an example that I've related, and Julie, you'll have heard this from me before because you came into a similar session when we did this in Profit Club, but just to kind of bring this home alive a little bit, quite a few years ago now, I decided to do an MBA, you know, a Master of Business Administration. And I pondered doing that for about 5 years. And, you know, that was because I was in my comfort zone. I was still quite challenged in what I was doing, but I just had that inertia stopping me from actually taking the action to go and find the right program and sign up to start on this amazing new qualification. So I was totally locked in to my comfort zone with that aspect of my life. But through the course of going then to all the different workshops that you go to and learning with other people, all the things that a great business school can do for you, and I got used to stepping out of my comfort zone, getting into the performance zone, and learning lots of stuff about every aspect of business. And that's when I was in my performance zone. But the day, the end of 2 years, and I was there sitting that final exam, I know for certain that was the day that I made the most progress, because it's the day ultimately when I sat that final exam and I passed that exam. I didn't know I'd passed it at the time, but that was the day I was on this edge of performance and fear zone. But it was the day I really broke through, and it made all of that work that I'd put in prior to that and all that enjoyment I'd had about being in the performance zone, it all came together on that one day. But it did feel very, very fearful. So on the form, we've got a question, there's a negative force there about how much of your time are you spending in the comfort zone. So if you give yourself a very high score on that one, it means, you're spending a lot of time in your comfort zone as opposed to, other medium or low levels of time. How much time do you feel, even if you didn't necessarily think about the performance zone before this, how much time are you spending more in the performance zone? It's something to think about as well. So if performance zone's a good thing, how do we get there? So in order to be a high performing individual and to have confidence to go forward and step out of our comfort zone and build new skills and take on new adventures, and ultimately to achieve better results for ourselves and friends and family and for ultimately our businesses, then we need to have all of 6 of these things. And we've already talked about performance. So this talked about high performance. So the 3 things to be a high performing individual means you need to have heaps of resilience, buckets loads of persistence, and equally large amounts of patience as well. You need to have all 3 of those things. And in a moment, I'm going to talk about resilience in particular. But resilience alone is not going to cut it. You need to be a highly resilient person, persisting to achieve your goals like nothing else exists, and be hugely patient as well in all aspects. But you can't take for granted that in order to be a high performing person, you've also got to be tick these first 3 boxes as well, which means you've got to have good levels of honesty, good levels of integrity. And by that I mean, when it comes to your own mental strength, do I actually trust myself to do what I say I will do? That's a big thing for us all to think about when we're looking to break out and improve and get better results. Do I really trust myself to do this? And then authenticity. It's important that we are who we are and we're not trying to be somebody else. So on the one hand, I'm encouraging you to think about the 3 high performing qualities that you need to have to achieve high performance, but you also need to be really thinking about these fundamentals as well, and that these are all appropriately in place for you. Again, on the form, what we ask you to do is to think about today, how resilient are you, how persistent, how patient are you? But perhaps before you do score those, let me just give you a little bit more insight into resilience. And we think, resilience is no doubt a massive balancing act. So, the things that create setbacks for us are when we are feeling stressed and pressured, and we maybe encounter problems that give us a bit of a setback. This time that we've all been through and are going through with the pandemic and all the adversity that's brought us, we can all think about the things that create us in our life, in our week, in our day, whatever it might be. But there's a magic tipping point between negative thoughts and positive thoughts, and it's this ratio of 3 to 1. And it's a really powerful ratio to think about, because once you are for every negative thought that you have, you can counter that by having at least 3 positive thoughts, then you'll get to the stage where you've got a good amount of resilience. And if you can actually go beyond that and have, even a stronger ratio of positive to negative thinking, and your resilience will be even stronger. Now, it's perhaps easy to say, but we'll talk in a little bit a moment about how to perhaps achieve some of this, but some real basic chemicals that are working in our body that genuinely create these negative thoughts and positive thoughts. And it's important to recognize them. So, you know, a negative thought it can actually be used to our power. We all could probably relate to that. You know, sometimes some of our most negative thoughts that we've had have spurred us into the best action we've ever taken. But the danger is if we just have negative thoughts, then we're releasing chemicals into our brain cells and our nerves, which actually are those that is the chemical that's linked to that kind of you know, flight or fight fear that we have from our kind of from how we're all created as human beings. And that's good in our times, you know, when we needed it, when we were hunting and when we were farming and when we were doing physical activity. But negative chemical release in our modern world is really negative for us. And I think we can all relate to either those moments ourselves where we've got ourselves into a pattern of negative thinking and we can't break out of it. You know, it's really quite easy to spiral down and to not see the positives and not be resilient. But as soon as we start to have a positive thought, we start to make sparks within our brain. We start to release the chemical of serotonin in our brains, and that starts to fire our brains up. And once we have one positive thought and fire up, you know, one connected set of brain cells, then the next positive thought fires up another part of the brain as well. If you think about the term brainstorming, and it's been around for donkey's years now, but that's what we do as a group, don't we, in brainstorming? You know, one person has a positive idea, it sparks a positive thought in somebody else who builds upon it, and we have that powerful brainstorming. So if you're in a frame of mind of, you know, quite a lot of negative thinking going on, then a good way is to kind of snap yourself out of it and say, right, let me now think of some positive thoughts as well. And I do this for myself because my internal voice, I can often be quite negative with myself. I'm quite hard on myself. You know, I've got high standards and I set a high bar. So that means I can be quite negative. But what I do recognize now is this power of 3 to 1. And for every negative thought that I have, I literally effectively click my fingers and trigger myself to think of immediately 3 powerful thoughts as well. And it really, really does work. And I really encourage you to do this. And it's what helps us be kind of highly resilient, highly resilient person. So the 3 to 1 ratio is super important, and it's what helps us with that resilient point. But we've got to be realistic, because there is something that does, and I've already referred to it, and it's called fear. And it does stop us. And, you know, depending upon our experiences in life, how we were brought up, what our basic character is, and our personality, fear will mean different things to each of us. We're an action coach. We say that fear is definitely false expectation appearing real. You know, you can't go and buy fear. Fear is an emotion, and it's made up. It doesn't exist. And if we can think about it in those terms, and I spoke before about there is this fear zone and we all have it, but you know, what we want to do is just minimize that sense of fear and not worry about things perhaps to the extent that we have, because it will be fear that holds us back. So how can we overcome fear? So the good news is there's at least 4 very basic coping strategies for overcoming fear. And the first of those is kind of building upon that thought that I've just been referring to, of that internal voice that we all have. You know, I took on an executive coach a number of years ago, and until I worked with that person, I wasn't even aware of this thing called your internal voice. But you know, once I started listening to my internal voice, it was quite negative. It was being quite negative about my situation at the time. So we all have this internal voice, but the good thing is, like positive thinking and generating positive thoughts, you know, one coping strategy that I'm sure you've probably recognized you have used, and you might use this regularly, is just to tell yourself to get over it, you know, through listening to your internal voice and then speaking to that voice and telling yourself to get over this situation. That often is enough to get you over this fear, but what if it's not? And in Action Coach, we absolutely love setting goals and having a very clear purpose in why we're looking to achieve things. And it's what we call having our strong why. And if you've ever come across the amazing work that Viktor Frankl, as a prolific author and psychologist, this book, A Man's Secret to Meaning, he wrote back in 1946 after his experience of being in 4 Nazi concentration camps. And the reason I'm just referring to this is that he really hit upon his experience in the Second World War and being in 4 Nazi concentration camps, encamped in those camps, but surviving them. He kind of came up with this theory that if you've got a big enough why to live, then you can bear almost anything about the how right now. And what he talks about in the book is how, he realized that when he was in his first concentration camp, he built in his own mind such a strong view of his future and life after this horrendous situation that he was going through. And so he built this massive why for himself. And what he started to notice is lots of other people around him were dying, but he was surviving. So he then started to coach other people in these concentration camps, and he moved across literally. He was literally forced to move from one camp to another as well. But he started to coach other people about the importance of having this why and having a sense of purpose after they got out of this horrific experience. And what he started to notice is that more of the people that he was coaching, more of them were surviving. So as a result of this experience, he went on to be this amazing author and psychologist about the importance of your why. So if the first of those scenarios isn't enough, and it's not enough just to tell your internal voice, then having your why in life, your why for your business, your why for this year, your goals and your why for the next 90 days is a massive coping strategy for overcoming any fears that you may have. If that's not enough, then there's a third strategy. And if you consider that fear is an emotion and that's all it is, then obviously the opposite to emotion is logic. So the other way, if the first 2 strategies haven't worked for you, then the other way is to invent these logical steps that allow you to make that first small step towards facing the fear, achieve that first step, work on what the next step looks to be like. In my coaching, I'm doing this a lot with my clients, is helping them once they understand they've got a particular issue that's holding them back. How can we just take small incremental steps, logical steps, to the other side of this thing that's holding us back? So that's the third way. However, in a small amount of cases, none of that's enough. And if it's not enough, you've got to basically blow up the root cause of this fear. And that's going to involve finding some special counsel to help you with this. What I would encourage, if this is where you might be at, and fear is something that really is scoring strongly on that sheet that you're scoring yourself on now, and these other things don't work for you, then you should go and do this, because while we've got these deep-rooted fears, they're going to massively hold us back from looking to take those opportunities that we're talking about up front, and we mentioned right up front. So but don't be afraid to do this. If this is the kind of action you need to take, if these other strategies don't work, there's plenty of great experts out there that can help get the root cause of what's holding you back and what your fears are. But whatever it is, fear is not real. We've got to overcome it in order that we can move forward and have a real strong mental strength. So the last 2 bits that you'll see on the form, I'm coming back to the only failure is the failure to participate. And I put it in the beginning of the workshop about the concept of failure to participate, fully in today's session, give it your attention. But if you think about your goals that you've got for yourself, whether it's this week or next month or this year, firstly, do you understand what your goals are? Are they written down? But how much are you participating in achieving your why, your goals, your purpose as well? Are you genuinely giving it 100%, or are you doing it only 90%, 99%. We have the philosophy that even if you're giving your only 99%, then it's not going to give you the 100% of result that you're looking to achieve, and it may not give you 99%. And a way I like to think about a nice example of this is, if you were an airline pilot trying to get your jumbo jet off the ground, and at the other end of the runway, if you don't succeed in getting your aircraft off the ground, is the ocean, and you're going to put yourself and all your passengers on that. So taking this concept in that example of, are you giving it 100%? In that case of that pilot, if he doesn't get his aircraft up to 182 miles an hour, he's not going to get, or she's not going to get that aircraft off the ground, and they're not, and they actually are going to be in the ocean at the other side of that runway. So think about examples like that when you're thinking about, are you giving your participation in your life, in your business? Are you really going out and seeking those opportunities? Again, on the score sheet, there's the opportunity for you to rate yourself right now. How involved are you in achieving the goals that you've set for yourself, for your business? And then the last thing, I want to come back to the point of power. I spoke about this in the beginning about, I need my coaching clients to be what I call above the point of power, because when they are, I know they're going to be in a nice open mind to move forward and be positive and take action. But thinking about this with regards to our mental health and mental strength is, we've all got this choice of which of these 6 behaviors are we adopting, and the negative ones of blame, excuse, being in denial, these are the ones that are going to be working against us and are going to be holding us back. And, denial can come in both negative and positive thought as well. And often we can be, saying to ourselves, convincing ourselves that we will make this change, but actually in reality, we won't. So, a classic thing might be, I'm going to give up smoking next week. Well, give it up today, because you won't give it up next week. Start it this week. So, what I'd like to encourage you all to do is to, take your self-assessment from today and start to take some action on it today. Because what we don't want is that kind of positive denial creeping in. But what we do absolutely want, in order for us to be powerful people, to be getting the most out of life, to be getting the most out of our business opportunity, is to be taking responsibility for being accountable and for taking ownership. And we have this acronym of OAR, and it's like, if you consider, we're all the captains of our own boat, our own ship. We've got the control of that oar. Sometimes it might not feel that way. We've got challenges with our clients, we might have challenges with our staff, we might have the issues that are caused by the pandemic, but it's only us that are going to solve these problems. We've obviously got experts that can help us, we've got teams around us, we've got colleagues, we've got friends, but ultimately we've got to take ownership of our actions. I think the final thing on that sheet is just for you to self-score yourself. How much time are you spending in those kind of negative behaviors of blame, excuse, and denial? And how much are you spending your time in those kind of above the point of power and being responsible and accountable and ownership? So the good news is that that's the end of some themes around where are you with your mental strength. So if you've been scoring yourself now, then you've got a worksheet in front of you, which should be a true reflection, taking each of those themes, and it's a reflection on your mental state right now. We're going to do a little bit of work together in a moment on how can we use this now for our benefit. And by the way, the reason for there being 9 positive things, driving forces, and 3 kind of restraining forces on there is purely to help encourage that thought process of the 3-to-1 ratio. So for every negative that's on that sheet, you've got kind of 3 positive things that can drive your mental strength as well. So we're going to do a little bit of a workshop exercise just in a few minutes to take your self-scoring, but actually do something with it. We'll come on to that in a second. But just to go back to give you a bit more insight into what we can do in Action Coach if you come into our group sessions or in our one-to-one coaching, and how the 5 ways can really help with helping us create some new opportunities, particularly for our marketing activity. So I mentioned at the start, that we've got these 5 levers that we can all use. Number of leads that we generate for our businesses, how effective we are at converting those leads into real customers, number of average transactions a year with each of our customers, the average value sale, and our profit margin. This is a nice, simple example of how we can make small changes and look for small opportunities. So this business here has got 4,000 leads a year, 25% conversion rate, 1,000 customers as a result of that. It transacts twice a year with each of those customers. It's got a £1,000 average sale value. It's got a nice tidy revenue of £200,000 and a gross profit of £50,000. But bringing on the value of the 5 ways, if we can get each of these up by just 10%, then we're going to improve our customers by 21%. If we can get the other 2 5 ways up by just 10% as well. So you can probably all agree that we're not talking about massive changes here. If we can just get our average number of transactions across all of our customers and products and services up by, in this case, just 0.2, and our average value sale by just by £10, then we're actually going to improve our revenue by 46%. Do the same to our profit margin, then we're going to get our profits up by 61%. So this is what we do within Action Coach. We work with our clients to set a series of 5 ways for their business, then to go about deliberately, what are the strategies that we can deploy for your business, for this situation right now, in order to improve your lead generation, to improve your conversion rate, and to improve your transactions and lifetime value that you get from your customers, and reduce your margins so that more of your revenue is actually realized in profit. And that 10% formula, by the way, is proven, and it's kind of guaranteed. If you can get all your 5 ways up by 10%, you will get your customers up by 21% and your ultimately your profits up by 61%. So coming back to the very beginning, you know, we want you to grow your businesses by seeing, creating, and taking opportunities. And it's important that, you know, we do see them, we do create them. If there's any help I can give you with understanding how through 5 ways we can help you create new opportunities for your business, then, you know, I'd love to see you in one of our group coaching sessions or within our strategy session that I mentioned earlier. But what I do want to do is to get some value from today's session. Never wish that life was easier, but wish you were better. And given we've got literally 5 minutes left, what I would suggest you do is just reflect now on your, I'll stop sharing this screen. I'd love for you to reflect on that sheet that's in front of you. Pick out from that, what I'd suggest is pick out on the left-hand side, which are the 2 scores you've given yourself the lowest scoring of, and on the right-hand side, which is the one that you've given yourself the highest score of. You've got 3 things there, 3 of your mental health and behaviors opportunities for improving your mental strength. If you take those 3, why don't you just get some discussion going in the chat, just put in the chat box what you've drawn out as your top things that you want to improve as a result of today's session.